So hello guys, today in this episode we have a special guest on our show, Mr. Danny Miranda. He is the host of the Danny Miranda Show. So let's dive into his mind and see the video. So hello guys, welcome back to the Subham Show. So today we have a special guest on our show, Mr. Danny Miranda. So welcome to the show, brother.
It is absolutely wonderful to be here. I'm so grateful for you inviting me on. Thank you.
Really appreciate. So, so people who are watching you for the first time, I would request you to give your quick introduction to the audience.
Quick introduction.
Yes.
My name is Danny Miranda, and I'm a lover of life. I record podcasts, I write tweets, and I just generally try to put my all into everything that I do, whether that's interviewing someone or talking to someone. I just love pursuing the highest version of myself, whether that's physically, mentally, spiritually. I love to lift weights. I love to do yoga. I love to meditate. I love it all. And so that's a little bit about myself.
So, dude, you have interviewed great guests from Gary Vee to David Perrel to Ali Abdal. So, what impact you have noticed in yourself after interviewing such great people?
I've noticed that I'm much better as a speaker. I'm much better asking questions. I'm much more confident with who I am throughout the progression. I just listened to the third episode that I've ever recorded and released, and I was like, wow, this is not so bad, but there's a lot of improvements that I would make if I was doing this today. So from talking to so many great people, I've benefited so much as a person. And, you know, when you talk to people, you get some of that. You trickle some of their greatness in some way. And while I'm by no means at the level of Gary Vaynerchuk or David Perrel or Ali Abdal, they've left some residue with me of their greatness. And I'm grateful for that.
So as I told you why I started podcasting, because of increasing my confidence and I can learn great things from people. So what makes you start your own podcast? What just first hit in your mind?
Yeah. So for me, I started it because I put out on Twitter wants to talk on the phone. And when I put this out, I got so many phone numbers and so many messages, and I had such great conversations with people. And I said to myself, wow, it would be an absolute shame if these conversations disappeared forever. And so I said, okay, I'm going to record these conversations. And that turned into the podcast.
So I told one of my friends on Twitter that I'm interviewing you. So he told me to ask you that how you reach out to great people like Gary Vee and David Perrel. I know you reach out to them through DMs and emails, but what is your strategy behind which makes them reply you?
Well, you know, it's interesting, right? Because once you get some success in having some great people like Gary Vee, who a lot of people are familiar with, and he comes on, then people are like, wow, that's pretty cool. But before that, it was just a matter of being persistent and realizing that the people that you look up to are reachable and they're only one message away, and not to feel down about yourself if they say no. If they say no, it has no reflection on you. It might have a slight reflection on you, but you have to take it in your mind that it's not reflecting on you at all, and that person is just busy and that person doesn't have time. Because if you take it like that, then the world is your oyster, because you're never going to get upset at the no's. You're never going to have that judgment for yourself, and you're going to be able to keep going and keep asking. And so for me, when I just started out, my pitch was, listen, I want to give you a well-researched conversation that fills you with energy, and I think you'll really enjoy it. And here are some of the guests that I've had on. And this was before Gary Vee. And I would try to make him talk about people that they knew or were familiar with. For example, if you interview me, my friend Tej Dosa is someone I talk about in nearly every podcast, and he's a friend of mine. And so if you go to him after talking to me and say, hey, I had Danny Miranda on my podcast, then he might be more receptive to being on your pod. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of looking at the social graphs of people and figuring out who you can connect with after connecting with that first person.
So since I have just started out, so would you like to give any advice for
Yeah.
podcasting?
So I would say that it's a game of reps, and you have to be in it for yourself if you expect to do it long term. And it's really important to understand what you want to get out of it when starting, right? Is your idea to become more extrovert? Is your idea to, become the biggest podcast in the world or one of them? Like, is your idea to spread love and kindness? Is your idea to get better as a speaker? These are things that it helps to define when beginning so that you don't get caught in the comparison game of, oh, wow, this podcast has so many more downloads, or this podcast is so much more popular. Like, that stuff is easy to get caught up in if you don't have clearly defined goals for what you personally want.
So usually I used to freak out during interviewing guests, but this time I'm not I'm very less nervous because you're a senior podcaster.
There's nothing to be nervous about, my
Yeah,
friend.
and you get
It's like we're two human beings on this
yeah,
floating rock in space who happen to connect for one moment in time.
yes, and no one can understand better than you like what goes inside our head. So
Absolutely.
dude, how meditation has impacted you? I know like you are facing great problems when you were first starting out, but what has the whole process has been?
Could you repeat that question?
How meditation has impacted your life? Like I know you have faced great problems when you were first starting out. Like how has been the whole process?
Meditation. Meditation has been critical to everything that I'm doing from a day-to-day perspective of managing and understanding. Okay, I have 2 interviews that I need to prepare for today. So, and I'm in my head thinking, what should I do about this? What should I do about that? Meditation centers me on the micro, but meditation also on the macro makes me a much more calm person, makes me much more willing to understand my real self, makes me question my reality more than I ever have before. And meditation is the reason why I've done what I've done over the past 2 years. It's like I'm building this podcast because of meditation. Without meditation, there is zero chance that I could be present in a conversation like I've been and being able to ask questions on the fly. Meditation is the essence of everything I've created, and I wouldn't be here without it. Do you meditate at all at 17 years old?
Yeah, yeah,
You do.
yeah. I have started
That's
this.
incredible, man.
Yes. So would you like to give any advice to our just starting out to meditate?
For people who are just starting out to meditate, I recommend you start with 20 minutes in the morning, first thing, before you look at your phone, before you interact with the world in any real way. And you get a kitchen timer, something that is not connected to your phone. I think it costs $7 on Amazon. And you set the timer for 20 minutes. You set the timer for 20 minutes and you just sit with your breath. Make sure you're upright and not in bed. That's what I do. I just have my feet laying out on a cushion and my back is straight, and I just sit there with my thoughts. And the important thing is not to beat yourself up, not to say, oh, I'm terrible at this, and to just try it for 90 days. And after 90 days, then you evaluate and see if this is for you, if you'd like to do more than 20 minutes, if you would like to scrap it entirely. You have to give it a real 90 days in a row effort. So I challenge anyone to do it for 90 days straight and then report back. And that's what I recommend for a completely beginner meditator.
I have faced a lot of problem when I was first starting out. So
What problems did you face?
like it was too boring. I used to close my eyes, like my head used to pain. So, dude, I have to ask you this question. What do you think? What will be the future of social media? So, what happened is that everyone thought Facebook is the best, then Instagram came, then everyone thought Instagram is the best, then TikTok came, now Clubhouse. So, what do you think about this?
I think you're in a better position as a 17-year-old to answer than me because as someone who's 25, going to turn 26 soon, what I realized was that I had a much clearer sense of the pulse when I was 17. I was much less influenced by the pre-existing things that I'd been doing and the ways in which I'd been using social media. So when you're younger, you have less filters on the world. But to give you an answer, I think TikTok's going to be huge. I think YouTube's going to be even bigger than it currently is because I think video, as Mark Zuckerberg once said, is a mega trend. And what that means is like, and the way I think about it is that in the 1400s, you had the Gutenberg press, and the Gutenberg press allowed anyone to write and spread their ideas. And this was revolutionary and crazy. Anyone could spread their ideas via the written word. In 2010 or 2015, anyone can record a video of themselves and speak. I mean, how crazy is that? Like anyone for the first time, and we're living through that. So video is only going to continue to expand. Maybe it'll turn into virtual reality at some point. But in the near future, I mean, I'm placing my bets on Twitter and YouTube. And I think you can't go wrong with TikTok as well. It's just going to explode. What do you think?
I think like now voice is going to get bigger, like Spotify, Clubhouse, and as you said, videos.
Yes, voice is definitely going to play a huge role in the future as well. With that's part of the reason why I started my podcast. Is like you could see that podcasts are starting to become a thing, but they're only going to become more of a thing in 10 years from now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, dude, what impact Twitter has created in you and your whole life? And why did you choose Twitter to start out your content?
So I've always been drawn to Twitter because I've always identified as a writer and somebody who is just interested in using the written word to spread my thoughts. It's only more recently where I've been like, okay, I'm going to record myself. I'm going to record myself with audio and video. And so for a long time, I was tweeting, back in 2012, 2013, 2010, even. And I would start and stop and start and stop. And so back in 2018, when I started my e-commerce journey, I wanted to document that process. And the most natural place for me to express myself was through the written word and through Twitter. So I built up a bit of a following on Twitter and then just continued on it. And it's been revolutionary, Twitter as a platform for me. I mean, it just is how I naturally express myself. I met so many interesting people. I'm so grateful for it. And yeah, Twitter is great. I highly recommend it if you're interested also in reading and the written word.
So, dude, I know Twitter is like how great Twitter is. So, would you like to say why Twitter is different than other social media?
Why Twitter is
Different and
is what?
yes, it's different than other social media and its merits
Different.
and demerits.
Twitter is different from other social media because it is a written word focused social media platform. Instagram is an image driven social media platform. YouTube and TikTok are video driven. And Twitter is really the place where you can get your social media from a written word perspective. It's almost like reading someone's journal if they take it that way. And so, yeah, it's really important to me. And I'm really grateful for the platform. Another thing that I like about it is that anyone can insert themselves into any conversation really easily. For example, on Instagram or on YouTube, someone has a post of something and then the comments are underneath. And that's quite different than it being an open forum and anyone being able to talk to anyone. And so I like that peer aspect of Twitter as a platform.
So, dude, what keeps you keep going? Like what happens with most people is that they start out few things, and if it does not work, they drop it down. I know you have been constantly posting on YouTube from about 6 months now. So, what keeps you keep going?
What keeps me going is understanding that this is just an expression of myself, and I need to keep going and keep expressing myself and keep creating. And it's the pure enjoyment of having these conversations and where I think it will lead in the future. It's the pure enjoyment of expressing myself through asking questions. It's the pure enjoyment of learning from people. Like, I feel so grateful every day. And so I guess the gratitude is really what drives me and keeps me pushing forward.
So would you like to recommend any five podcast or any five books which has impacted you?
Sure. So, Conscious Living by Gay Hendricks was really pivotal book for me. Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It by Kamal Ravikant. What else do we got here? We got Modern Wisdom, a podcast by Chris Williamson, is incredible. The Joe Rogan Experience and the Tim Ferriss Show are three of my favorite podcasts around, and I highly recommend people check those out.
It's my favorite too.
I love it, man. You've
So
got great taste.
yeah. So, dude, this is gonna be a hard question. What makes a people super successful? Like what, and also what hits in your mind when you first hear the word successful?
The first person or the first thing?
Or anything.
The first
What
thing that
comes
pops
like,
into
yeah, what pops
what
in
co-
your head?
peace. The people who are really successful are peaceful and content with what they have, and they could be striving for more, but they're doing it from a place of peace and love, in that successful what they're doing is just creating peace and love in their life. And so when I think of people who are successful, I think of people who are really peaceful with what is. That doesn't mean that they won't strive for more, or that just is the way it is, but they're willing to understand that this moment is beautiful for what it is. And if you can say that and genuinely feel that you're peaceful with what you're going through in this moment, then you are successful in my eyes.
So, what makes it people peaceful?
To attach themselves, attach is the wrong word, to bring themselves to the present moment is how I've often found peace myself. And not to say that I'm peaceful 100% of the time, but the moments when I do feel peaceful, it's because I'm attached, or rather I'm in the present moment fully and not thinking or wishing that I was somewhere else.
So, what is the best advice you have ever heard?
The best advice I've ever heard was from Gary Vaynerchuk, when he told me on my podcast that when I asked him if he had a goal for starting Wine Library TV, which was his original wine show, I asked him if he knew it was going to be successful. And he said, yes, because the learnings from the process would be more successful, would be better than the financial ramifications from that project. And how people starting things underestimate what they'll learn from the process because they're too focused on the money aspect of it. I've personally made $200 total from my podcast. Not an incredible amount of money by any means, but it has taught me more about myself than anything I've ever done in my life. So, was it worth it? Absolutely, 100%. And so that was the best advice I've heard before.
Also, what advice would you like to give in your 20s yourself?
In my 20s, I would, everyone's at a different point in their life.
Like,
Everyone goes through different things, but
like you are in your 20s now, like before 20s,
yeah,
when you
yeah.
were in high
So,
school.
yeah, so what I would say to myself in high school is, don't be afraid to try new things and to build habits that are going to be things that you're going to want in the future. For example, I knew I wanted to lift weights, and I kind of put that off for a long time. And if I had just started earlier, I would have been ahead earlier. And that's so common from people who have done things when after they do things, they said, oh, why didn't I just start earlier? And that's the truth, is like, start earlier than you think. And if you're about 40% sure of something, just go ahead and do it. Because if you can just do it, then you're going to feel and understand if you like it or not. And it's going to give you more information. So I would say to myself, take more actions, take more risks, and be willing to fail because you're young and you have so much life ahead of you.
What is your rule for success?
My rule for success
Yes.
is just to love and to be peaceful. And if I can love myself first and then that gets expanded to others, then I can be peaceful. And the more I love myself, the more peaceful I am. So my rule for success is to love.
And what wealth uh, describe your life? Like, how do you describe wealth in your life?
How I describe wealth in my life
Yes.
is enjoying a cup of coffee with my mom, having the time to sit down to meditate. Like, that's real wealth, man. Like, the ability to have this conversation right now, that's wealth. Like, the ability to appreciate any given moment, wealth. Like, wealth is not money. Wealth on first glance may seem like money, but real wealth is the ability to spend time on the people and things that matter to you the most.
I've seen this thing in every successful is that they are not materialistic. It's a
Yeah,
common thing.
it's true, man.
So this is gonna be a type question, Danny. What would we like to look back at when you're in your deathbed?
What would my life look like on
Yes.
my deathbed?
Look back
Hopefully,
at.
yeah. Hopefully, it was the life of somebody who was willing to take risks, who was willing to put himself out there, who was willing to step into the arena, who was willing to do the difficult things that needed to be done to be the person he wanted to be, and who spread love and kindness to the world and made the world happier, healthier, and wiser in some magnificent way. That is what I hope to look back and see. And how that manifests, I don't know, but that's part of the fun and the excitement of taking the steps forward without any expectation, but also with knowing that it is exactly what you need to be doing in this moment.
Also, lastly, uh, Danny, what choices have you made in your life which you regret the most?
Probably not starting meditation as late. I started meditation way too late, man. Like, I I wasn't it was something that I was aware of, but it took a long time for me to actually start to practice. Because when you're in that place of knowing how far you need to go, it's sometimes difficult to actually take that first step. And if I had started meditation um, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I would be in a much calmer, more peaceful place. And if I had done it with the expectation and the knowledge that there was nothing to be gained from the meditation, that would be even better. Like, that the meditation itself was the reward I was giving myself. And that's a very hard thing to come to. And I'm still so grateful that I've come to it at this point in my life. And I started when I was 24 because it gives me a whole lifetime to learn and to grow. And so I regret not doing meditation earlier, but at the same time, I'm extremely grateful for doing it when I started.
So, lastly, Danny, would you like to give any advice to me?
Advice to you. I don't know you that well, my man. And you've asked some great questions, but I would I would need to know more about you in order to give advice to you, because I think we're so quick to throw out some advice and throw out some ways we believe others should act, but we at the same time maybe don't know the people. And I'm guilty of this myself. On Twitter, I'm throwing out advice left and right. And this is really important because you can look at advice, but if you're not self-aware, if you haven't looked at yourself, you might not know if the advice is for you or it's not for you. So the advice that I would give to you is to become more self-aware, aka to meditate. And it's the advice I'd give to everyone because it's one piece of advice that has seemed to prove true for just about everyone. So my advice, meditate, which it seems like you already do.
So you can give advice to a young people who don't know what to do with his life.
A young person who doesn't know what to do with his life, I would say try a bunch of different things. Don't say no because it looks stupid or because your friends would make fun of you for doing it. Be willing to be courageous and try things that are outside of your comfort zone. Try foods maybe that are outside of your comfort zone. Try activities that are outside of your comfort zone. And from that place, you can learn more about yourself and learn more about where your passions lie in life.
So thank you, Danny, for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the thoughtful questions, and I'm grateful for you asking them.
So thank you guys for watching out the podcast, and I'll see you guys in the next one.